Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when the weight we carry feels too heavy. The road we walk seems too long, and the questions we whisper in the silence go unanswered. Yet it is in these very moments, when our spirit bends but does not break, that God begins his most extraordinary work. For every struggle you have endured, every tear you have shed, every night you have spent wrestling with doubt, there is a strength being woven inside you that you cannot yet see. And as Maya Angelou so beautifully taught us, still, like dust, we rise. Today, I stand before you to remind you that God does not allow storms to destroy you. He allows them to shape you, lift you, and turn your struggles into the very strength that will carry you into your purpose. Your struggles are God's preparation for your purpose. And when we begin to understand this truth, something shifts inside the human spirit. We stop looking at our storms as punishment and start recognizing them as classrooms. We stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to ask, "What is this shaping in me?" Every hardship that has ever touched your life has been carving, molding, refining a deeper part of you that could not be shaped in comfort. Purpose is not born in easy mornings or quiet afternoons. Purpose grows in the places where life pushes you to your knees and demands that you rise again. You may not always understand the path you are walking, but you can trust that the one who designed the path knows exactly what each step is preparing you for. God does not waste pain. He does not allow you to suffer without reason. He does not leave you stranded in valleys without planting inside you a strength that can only be discovered in darkness. There are parts of your destiny that can only be awakened through discomfort, through loss, through heartbreak, through disappointment, through the nights that felt endless and the days that felt heavy. And when Maya Angelou spoke of rising, she spoke not as someone who lived an untouched life, but as someone who walked through fire and learned that even the fire serves a purpose when placed in the hands of God. There are moments in life when you feel as though the weight you carry is too much, when it seems as if God has placed more on your shoulders than you are capable of bearing. But what if the weight is not meant to break you, but to build the very muscles you will need for the journey ahead? What if the struggle you fear is actually a divine invitation to grow, to deepen, to expand into a version of yourself you have not yet met? God often prepares his greatest warriors in the quiet corners of their deepest struggles, because it is in those corners that pride falls away, illusions fade, masks dissolve, and you meet the truest parts of yourself. When everything around you feels unstable, you begin to discover what is unshakable within you. When life tests you beyond your limits, God is revealing that your limits were never truly limits at all. There are seasons when you may feel forgotten, unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. But every time you felt overlooked, God was positioning you. Every time you were pushed aside, God was clearing space for something greater. Every time you felt abandoned by people, heaven was whispering, "I am still here." We often believe that purpose is found in applause and recognition and success, but purpose is formed in the quiet, unseen battles that no one knows you're fighting. It is formed in the conversations you have with yourself in the middle of the night when doubt tries to strangle your hope. It is formed in the decisions to show up once more, even when fatigue, fear, and frustration try to convince you to stop. The soul grows not when life is gentle, but when life is demanding. And God allows certain demands, not to crush your spirit, but to reveal how resilient your spirit truly is. Sometimes God will close doors you prayed would stay open because those doors were too small for the size of your calling. Sometimes he will remove people you thought you couldn't live without because their presence would weaken the foundation he is trying to build within you. Sometimes he will allow delays because rushing ahead would cause you to enter a room you are not yet equipped to stand in. Growth does not always feel good, but it is always necessary. Preparation does not always look divine, Often it looks like struggle, confusion, uncertainty, discomfort, and repetition. But each repetition, each obstacle, each setback is sharpening something inside you that comfort would leave dull. You may look at your life and see broken pieces, but God sees building blocks. You may see failures. God sees lessons that become stepping stones towards your destiny. You may see wounds that have not yet healed. God sees openings where compassion, wisdom, and strength will one day flow. Nothing you have endured is wasted. Not one tear slipped from your eyes without being counted by the one who holds your future. Not one disappointment was allowed without containing a hidden assignment. Not one heartbreak entered your life without carrying a seed of transformation. Your struggle is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It is a sign that He is preparing something in you that requires pressure. Diamonds do not form in softness. Gold is not purified in cool waters. Strong souls are not raised in easy seasons. There is a certain beauty in becoming acquainted with your own resilience when you've walked through storms and still found the strength to smile, to hope, to love. You begin to understand that the power within you is far greater than the trials around you. God is not simply shaping your circumstances, He is shaping you. And you are the masterpiece He refuses to rush. You may feel delayed, but you are not denied. You may feel stretched, but you are not abandoned. You may feel tired, but you are still progressing. Progress often hides beneath the surface where human eyes cannot see it. Just as a seed grows roots before it grows leaves, you are being strengthened in the unseen places before your breakthrough appears in the visible world. Maya Angelou often spoke of courage as the most important of all virtues, because without courage, no other virtue can be practiced consistently. And what is courage, if not the ability to rise through struggle, to stand tall in uncertainty, to trust in purpose even when the path feels unclear? Your struggles are teaching you courage. They are expanding your capacity to stand, to speak, to endure, to love, to forgive, to overcome. They are teaching you how to navigate life without losing the essence of who you are. They are teaching you how to rise again and again, even when rising feels impossible. And every time you rise, you become stronger than you were the day before. Every time you recover, you step deeper into the version of yourself God always knew you could become. Some of the most powerful people you will ever meet are not those who have lived easy lives, but those who have faced storms and chosen to grow instead of crumble. They did not allow bitterness to take root. They did not allow fear to diminish their spirit. They did not allow adversity to define their worth. They allowed their struggles to become teachers, their pain to become purpose, their obstacles to become openings. You are being shaped in the same way. You are being prepared through the very experiences you once wished you could avoid. And one day, when you step into the fullness of your calling, you will look back and understand why the struggle was necessary, why the journey had to be difficult, why the preparation took time, why the pruning felt painful. You will see that every chapter mattered, even the ones you wanted to skip. Strength grows in the places where you once felt broken, and there is a quiet miracle in that truth that many never recognize while they are still hurting. It is only when you look back that you begin to see how every crack in your heart, every wound in your spirit, every disappointment that left you breathless was quietly shaping a depth inside you that could not have been formed in sunshine alone. Human beings are so often convinced that brokenness is the end of the story, but God uses brokenness as the beginning of transformation. He uses it as the place where courage is awakened, where character is carved, where resilience begins to speak, where the soul grows roots that cannot be easily pulled from the soil. The areas you once protected because they were too painful to touch become the very places where your strength rises like morning light after a long night of storms. There are times in life when you feel shattered in ways you cannot put into words, times when you walk through your days holding yourself together with sheer willpower, times when the tears fall before you can stop them and the questions gather like clouds with no clear answers in sight. Yet the same places that felt like the end of you are often the places where God begins to build something new. Brokenness does not disqualify you, it prepares you. It softens what had become hardened. It opens what had become closed. It invites tenderness where pride had once taken root. And slowly, without you even noticing, the parts of you that were torn begin to strengthen, not because the pain was easy, but because your spirit learned something powerful in the midst of it. There is a kind of strength that can only be born after loss, a kind of wisdom that comes only after you have walked barefoot across the sharp edges of life, a kind of compassion that blooms only after your own heart has been bruised. People who have never been broken often speak of strength with loud voices, but those who have been shattered speak of strength with quiet certainty, because they know what it feels like to rebuild themselves from pieces. They know what it feels like to hold on to hope with trembling hands. They know what it feels like to rise when rising seemed impossible. And because they know, their strength carries a weight, a grounding, a depth that cannot be faked or manufactured. When Maya Angelou spoke of rising, she spoke as a woman who had tasted suffering, who had walked through silence and shame, who had carried burdens that could have crushed her. Yet she rose not in spite of her brokenness, but because of it. Broken places taught her how to fly. Pain taught her how to speak with truth. Struggle taught her how to walk with dignity. And it is the same with you. You may not feel strong right now, but strength is growing in the very places where you once felt the weakest. Every time you choose to get up again, every time you choose to heal instead of hide, every time you choose to move forward, even when fear holds your ankles, you are growing stronger in ways you cannot yet see. The world often teaches us to hide our brokenness, to pretend that every piece of us is whole. But real strength is not built in the pretending, it is built in the acknowledging. When you acknowledge the places where you hurt, God begins to work in those places. When you acknowledge the pieces that have fallen apart, God begins to weave them into something new. When you acknowledge the chapters that left scars, God transforms those scars into stories that carry power. Strength grows in broken places because brokenness allows light to enter. It allows God to step into rooms of your heart you would never have opened voluntarily. It allows your soul to breathe in ways it never had before. There are moments when you will feel as though the pain is reshaping you in ways you don't recognize. You may feel different, quieter, more fragile than before. But fragility is not weakness. It is the beginning of sensitivity, intuition, awareness. It is the beginning of new growth. When a tree breaks in a storm, it does not stop growing, it grows differently. Its branches thicken, its roots deepen, its trunk strengthens. And years later, the tree stands taller than before, shaped not in spite of the storm, but because of it. You are growing in the same way. Your roots are going deeper. Your spirit is stretching wider. Your emotional muscles are expanding in places where life once left you trembling. People often mistake strength for hardness, but true strength is not hard. True strength is flexible, open, living. Hard things crack, but strong things bend and rise again. Brokenness teaches you how to bend. It teaches you how to navigate the unpredictable winds of life without losing yourself. It teaches you how to protect your peace while still keeping your heart open. It teaches you how to love again after you swore you never would. It teaches you how to forgive, not because the pain was acceptable, but because your spirit refuses to stay bound to what tried to destroy it. Strength grows in broken places because brokenness clears room for grace to enter, and grace can grow gardens in the most barren soil. Some of the strongest people you will meet have walked through heartbreaks that could have silenced them forever. They have faced betrayals that could have closed their hearts. They have endured losses that could have emptied their souls. Yet they continue to show up in the world with kindness, with wisdom, with generosity. Their strength was not inherited. It was built through experience, through sweat, through tears. It was built through nights when they doubted their worth and mornings when they had to push themselves out of bed. It was built through adversity that carved out deeper layers within them. And you too are becoming one of these people. Your broken places are teaching you how to love with depth, how to stand with intention, how to speak with clarity, how to live with purpose. Strength is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is the quiet choice to keep believing. Sometimes it is the silent commitment to heal. Sometimes it is the soft whisper inside your own chest saying, "Not today. I will not break today." Each whisper is a form of strength. Each small act of endurance is a seed shifting beneath the soil. And just as seeds break before they grow, you too have experienced moments of breaking so that new life could emerge from within you. Those moments were not the end. They were the beginning of transformation. You may not have realized it then, but God was planting something inside you the entire time. There is something holy about the way a broken person rebuilds themselves. It is never fast, never linear, never clean. It is messy and unpredictable. Some days you feel whole, some days you feel shattered all over again. But even on the days when you backslide, you are still growing. Even when you feel weak, strength is still forming. Even when grief revisits your heart, healing continues to unfold. And with each step, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself you thought were lost. You begin to discover that your worth was never gone, that your identity was never destroyed, that your soul was never defeated. It was simply being refined, shaped, expanded. Strength grows in the places where you once felt broken because brokenness opens the door to transformation in ways comfort never could. You learn how to trust your intuition because you felt what happens when you ignore it. You learn how to choose silence because you've experienced the weight of unnecessary battles. You learn how to give yourself time because you once rushed your healing and paid the price. You learn how to protect your peace because you've lived in chaos. You learn how to say no because you've learned the cost of always saying yes. These lessons, born from brokenness, become the architecture of your strength. God transforms pain into wisdom when you trust His timing. And although this truth sounds simple, living it requires a courage that many only discover when life brings them to their knees. There are moments when pain presses so heavily on your chest that breathing feels like work. Moments when the questions inside you swirl louder than the answers. Moments when you wonder if God has gone silent or if your prayers have been lost somewhere between your tears and the heavens. Yet even in those moments, something sacred is happening. Even in the stillness that feels empty, something is unfolding beneath the surface. Pain is never just pain in the hands of God. It is a tool, a teacher, a sculptor that carves away what is temporary so that what is eternal can take shape within you. Wisdom is not born in comfort. Wisdom is born in the places where your heart breaks open and you discover the strength that has lived inside you all along. It is grown in seasons when you have nothing left to lean on but trust. It is shaped in the very moments when God's timing feels slow, confusing, or unfair. We often want deliverance without delay, answers without waiting, clarity without struggle. But God develops wisdom through the long, steady stretching of the soul. He uses time as a chisel to shape you. And though you may not understand the waiting, He understands what the waiting is producing inside you. Every unanswered prayer, every detour, every delay is preparing something you cannot yet see. Pain has a way of slowing life down. And in that slowing, you begin to listen differently. You begin to see differently. You begin to feel differently. The noise of the world fades and the truth of your own soul rises. God often speaks the clearest when life feels the quietest. You might think you are standing still, but spiritually something is moving. You are being aligned, humbled, softened, strengthened. You are being stretched into a wiser version of yourself. Wisdom does not shout. It grows slowly. It does not arrive through perfection, but through experience. Through nights when sleep will not come. Through days when grief seems to cling like a shadow. Through seasons when you can't see the way forward, but walk anyway. There are times when pain feels like a thief, stealing your joy, your hope, your sense of control. But in truth, pain can also be a giver. It can give you clarity you never had. It can give you compassion for others. It can give you insight into what truly matters. It can give you a deeper connection to God because you learn to reach for Him not out of routine, but out of necessity. Pain reveals the superficial things you once valued and teaches you to prioritize what the soul actually needs. And as you walk through it, slowly, gently, quietly, the pain begins to shift into something else, understanding. And understanding becomes insight, and insight becomes wisdom. Trusting God's timing is one of the greatest spiritual disciplines, for time can feel like both a blessing and a burden. When you're hurting, a single hour can feel like a mountain. A single day can feel like a test. A single month can feel like a lifetime. But God does not measure time the way we do. He sees the full picture, the entire blueprint, the long arc of your becoming. While you see the moment that hurts, He sees the chapter that heals. While you see the setback, He sees the setup. While you see the delay, He sees the preparation. And when you learn to trust His timing, the pain you once believed would break you begins to shape you in ways you never expected. Some of the greatest wisdom you will ever gain comes from the moments that once brought you to tears. You look back on situations that once shattered you and realize they shaped your character more than any joyful moment ever could. You remember the nights when you begged God for answers, only to understand later that He was protecting you from something you didn't know was coming. You recall the disappointments that felt cruel at the time, but later revealed themselves as divine redirections. Pain becomes wisdom when time reveals what the heart could not see in the moment. There is a gentle beauty in trusting God, even when everything inside you is trembling. Trust does not always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels like holding on to a thin thread of hope in the middle of chaos. But even that thin thread holds power, because trusting in God's timing means surrendering the illusion that you must control everything. It means understanding that faith is not a feeling. It is a choice to believe that God is working even when life feels motionless, a choice to believe that you are growing even when you feel stuck, a choice to believe that your story is unfolding exactly as it should, even when the process feels painful. Pain transforms you in stages. First, it breaks you open. Then it forces you to examine the pieces. Then it teaches you which pieces to keep and which ones to release. Finally, it gives you clarity. Not the clarity that comes from perfect answers, but the clarity that comes from spiritual maturity. You begin to recognize patterns you once ignored. You see the truth behind people's actions. You understand your own needs, your own boundaries, your own wounds. Wisdom blooms in the quiet aftermath of pain, and what once hurt you becomes something that guides you. There is a certain grounding that comes from having walked through storms you thought would destroy you. A quiet confidence, a deeper patience, a more compassionate heart. Pain humbles you, and humility invites wisdom. When you trust God in your darkest moments, you begin to learn who He is on a deeper level. You learn that He is not only the God of blessings, but the God of becoming. You learn that He is not only the God of provision, but the God of process. You learn that He is not only the God of answered prayers, but the God of timing that protects you even when you don't understand it. Sometimes the wisdom you gain from pain is simply learning what to let go of. Letting go of people who were not meant to stay. Letting go of expectations that kept you disappointed. Letting go of habits that once numbed your hurt but now keep you small. Letting go of the belief that you must fix everything, carry everything, understand everything. Pain loosens the grip of illusion. It teaches you that survival is not the same as living, and healing is not the same as pretending. It teaches you that vulnerability is not weakness, and asking for help is not surrendering your strength. You become wiser because you become more honest with yourself. God does not allow pain to enter your life without purpose, but purpose often takes time to reveal itself. You may not understand the lesson until months or years later when you find yourself advising someone with a tenderness rooted in your own experience. You may not see the transformation until one day you respond with peace instead of anger, patience instead of frustration, clarity instead of confusion. You begin to realize that pain sharpened your discernment. It deepened your intuition. It strengthened your emotional muscles. It opened your eyes to red flags you once ignored. It taught you to value your own soul in ways you never did before. Wisdom gained through pain is the kind that cannot be shaken by storms. It is anchored. It is grounded. It is steady. When you trust God's timing, the wisdom that grows from your pain becomes not just something you know, but something you embody. Something that guides your choices, your relationships, your boundaries, your faith. And you begin to understand that pain was not the enemy, it was the invitation. The invitation to become someone deeper, wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more grounded in truth, more aligned with God's vision for your life. Every challenge carries a divine lesson meant to lift your spirit. Though when you are standing in the middle of the struggle, the lesson is often hidden beneath layers of confusion, fear, and discomfort. Life has a way of presenting challenges that stretch the very fabric of who you are. Challenges that make you question your strength, your faith, your purpose, and sometimes even your worth. But what feels like a burden at first is often a blessing in disguise, slowly unfolding its meaning over time. God allows certain challenges not to weigh you down, but to lift you higher than you would have ever climbed on your own. Each challenge arrives with its own message, its own wisdom, its own invitation to rise into a greater version of yourself. There are moments when life seems to test you in rapid succession, as if the universe has conspired to push every limit you have. Those moments bring a heaviness that feels almost unbearable. You may wonder why certain storms were sent your way. You may question the timing, the intensity, the purpose behind them. But challenges are not random. They are a sign. They are crafted to reveal something dormant within you. They take you into the deep waters of spiritual growth, where you are forced to rely on faith more than logic, intuition more than fear, trust more than doubt. In these deep waters, you learn how strong your spirit truly is, and you begin to understand that every challenge is a teacher with divine intentions. God does not send difficulty to punish you, He sends difficulty to prepare you. Challenges shape your character in ways comfort never could. They sharpen your awareness, open your heart, expand your capacity to endure and to love. You learn to see beyond the surface of things, beyond the noise, beyond the temporary frustration. You start to notice patterns in your reactions, in your thinking, in your emotional landscapes. Every challenge teaches you something about yourself, something you may not have learned if life had remained easy and predictable. Strength, resilience, patience, humility, discernment, gratitude, courage. These are gifts that grow most powerfully through adversity. There are challenges that enter your life to stop you, but more often they come to redirect you. A door that closes abruptly may feel like an unnecessary heartbreak, but you later Realize it was protecting you from a path that would have drained your spirit. A relationship that ends may feel like betrayal, but later you see it was making room for healthier connections. A delay that frustrates you may later reveal itself as a divine pause, ensuring you arrive at your destination with the wisdom, maturity, and strength required to stay there. Challenges carry divine timing. They slow you down when you are moving too fast. They wake you when you are spiritually asleep. They push you forward when fear has you stuck in place. There are times when a challenge forces you to look inward, to confront parts of yourself you have long ignored. It might ask you to face the wounds you've buried, the fears you've dismissed, or the habits that no longer serve your growth. These internal challenges are often the most difficult because they demand honesty, vulnerability, and accountability. But once you begin the journey inward, you discover truths that liberate you. You uncover strength you forgot you had. You release beliefs that were limiting your potential. You forgive yourself for mistakes, for hesitations, for the times you accepted less than you deserved. These are the divine lessons woven into challenge, lessons that lift your spirit by freeing it. Sometimes the divine lesson is patience. Sometimes it is faith. Sometimes it is resilience. Sometimes it is compassion. Sometimes it is learning how to let go. Sometimes it is learning how to hold on. Sometimes it is learning how to speak your truth. Sometimes it is learning how to remain silent. Challenges refine your discernment so you can understand when to move and when to wait, when to fight and when to surrender, when to speak and when to listen. These lessons shape your journey in ways that last far beyond the momentary discomfort of the challenge itself. The spirit is lifted not because the challenge disappears, but because you grow through it. Growth changes your perspective. What once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes an opportunity. What once felt like failure becomes a doorway. Challenges help you develop a new relationship with yourself. You begin to trust your instincts more. You trust your capacity to endure. You trust your ability to rebuild, to begin again, to rise again. You become acquainted with a version of yourself that can withstand storms without losing softness, strength without losing compassion, resolve without losing hope. Maya Angelou often spoke of the resilience of the human spirit, of its ability to rise despite everything meant to hold it down. She understood that challenges were not roadblocks but stepping stones, each one carrying a message, a lesson, a new layer of wisdom. And you too are walking through a curriculum designed specifically for your soul's evolution. The challenges you face are not random trials, but sacred assignments. They are preparing you to walk with dignity through experiences you have not yet reached. They are molding you to carry purpose with humility, courage with grace, strength with tenderness. Every challenge has the power to open your eyes in a new way. You start to see people differently. You become more compassionate because you recognize your own wounds in the eyes of others. You become more understanding because you know what it feels like to struggle quietly. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, your heart. You begin to value what truly matters and release what was only weighing you down. This elevated awareness is a divine lesson, one that lifts your spirit by shifting your perspective from survival to growth, from fear to understanding, from pain to purpose. Challenges also reveal the truth about relationships. Some people step forward to support you in ways you never expected. Others pull away, showing that their presence was conditional. Both are lessons. You learn who your true companions are, who loves you genuinely, and who only loved what you provided. You learn to appreciate the rare souls who remain steady when everything around you is falling apart. And you learn to detach gracefully from those who were not meant to walk with you into the next chapter. Every relationship has its divine timing and its divine purpose, and challenges illuminate these truths with clarity. There are challenges that test the depth of your faith, forcing you to trust in what you cannot see. You may feel as though God is silent, but silence is not absence. In silence, God is teaching you to listen differently. In stillness, He is teaching you to sense His presence in new ways. In waiting, He is teaching you patience that strengthens your spirit. In confusion, He is teaching you to lean into faith. These spiritual lessons elevate you. They shift your connection to God from one of convenience to one of commitment. You learn to walk by faith and not by sight, to trust that the challenge you are facing is part of a greater design unfolding for your good. Every challenge invites a response. You can resist it and extend your suffering, or you can embrace it and extract its wisdom. Resistance does not stop the challenge, it only delays the growth. Acceptance does not mean you enjoy the challenge, it means you recognize its purpose. When you embrace the lesson hidden within the struggle, you rise into a version of yourself that is more grounded, more aware, more aligned with your true path. Your spirit lifts because it is no longer fighting what is meant to shape you. There is a divine order woven into the chaos of challenge. Even when everything appears out of place spiritually, everything is exactly where it needs to be. The lessons you are learning now will guide you for years to come. The strength you are developing now will support you in battles you haven't yet fought. The clarity you are receiving now will protect you from repeating old mistakes. The wisdom you are gaining now will become light for someone else who is walking a path you once walked. And in this way, your challenge becomes not only your teacher, but your testimony.